How's everyone doing? I'm glad. And if you're not doing well, I hope you're going to start now. Because I'm going to tell you, Jesus has been dancing for joy with how many people have been coming out. I travel the country doing missions. I go, people say, how do I get where I go? I only go where I'm invited. I don't advertise. I say, Holy Spirit, send me. And when I heard that there was going to be a tri-parish mission, at first I was not, I said, oh, those usually don't work. This one's worked. So, thank you. Thank you. And I was talking to Father Paul, Seaman, the pastor of St. George, who still, he's doing better, but he has a cold, a bad cold, so he just doesn't want to give it to us all. I said, good. So, but he asked me to say something. He said, he said, ask everyone tonight, try to meet someone from another parish. That's the church. That's what it means to be part of the Catholic family. Go up to someone, and don't be afraid. They're afraid too, so then you're both afraid, so you're on equal playing field. And blame Father Paul. Say, well, Father Paul said I had to meet you. How are you? Okay? And it could be someone you know. I love in churches, because I know everyone sits in the same seat. We all know that, right? There are no assigned seats, just don't sit in mine. Okay? But how many times we just wave to someone? We know them, we see them all the time, but we don't know who they are. So even in your own parishes, do that. And if you see someone that you could just tell is a visitor, go up and say, hello, are you visiting? We're happy you're here. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's part of our Catholic faith. So today we're going to look at the Catholic family. What does that mean? So we looked at the saints, we've looked at prayer, and now we're going to look at the Catholic family. And the most important thing, in my opinion, of being a Catholic is giving thanks. Giving thanks. We just heard the gospel. 10 lepers. 10 lepers, their lives were changed forever. They were changed. Because leprosy was so contagious, they didn't know how it was transmitted, but lepers were outcasts. They were an outcast. Imagine how lonely their existence was. And if you did go around people, you had to yell out, unclean, unclean. And everyone would run away from you. How lonely that had to be. And so today, Jesus heals 10 lepers. And their lives were changed forever. And they all ran off. And one came back and realized, my life has changed, but I didn't thank the one who changed my life. And he comes back, and Jesus says, weren't there 10? And the only one to come back is this foreigner, a Samaritan, an outcast, a foreigner, and he's the one that came back to thank me. Where were the other 9? And the people are like, oh. The only one who came back. Do you think Jesus needs their thanks or our thanks? No. Do you think he likes it? Yeah. Don't you like it when someone thanks you for what you do? And so, how do you give thanks? I'll never forget, it was about 15 years ago. I stopped at a gas station, and I filled the car up with gas, and I went into the little mini mart to get a bottle of pop. So I'm in line. There were 2 or 3 people ahead of me, and the clerk was this young girl, maybe 20 years old, and she's yapping on her cell phone. She doesn't acknowledge you. She doesn't tell you how much you owe. You have to look at the cash register. Doesn't say thank you. And she's yapping very, vibrantly on this phone. So it cuts to be my turn. I walk up and I said, hello. She ignores me. I put my bottle of pop down. She doesn't tell me how much I owe. I have to look at the cash register. And then there was no one behind me. She gives me my change, doesn't say thank you, and then turns around to look out the window, yapping. Puts her back to me. You know what I wanted to do with that bottle of pop? I wanted to smash her on the head with it. I did. I didn't do it, but I wanted to. And I said, hey, listen here, lady. You have a job because I'm in here buying a bottle of pop. The least you could do is acknowledge that I'm a human being. The least you could do is say thank you. I have never been back to that gas station. If you don't need to thank me, you don't need my business. Now, maybe I'm being petty, but I don't think I am. You got to give thanks. Do you remember who was the first person or persons that taught us how to give thanks? Our parents. Didn't our parents teach us to write thank you notes? I love thank you notes from kids. You got the whole card and they only write in the top corner. The rest of the card is blank. I can remember my mother sat me down and taught me how to write thank you notes after my first Holy Communion. That probably was the first time we got a lot of gifts. We actually went to the Hallmark store. We bought some. She said, which ones do you want? We went home. She taught me how to do it. She taught me how to put the address on. She taught me how to put the return label. She taught me how to put stamps on. And then we got in the car and she took me to the post office. And she said, this is where you do it. I was, 7 years old. And I had fun doing it. I said, oh, this is cool. About 3 days later, I get a phone call. Because one of the people I sent a thank you card to was my aunt's husband's mother. And about 3 days later, I get a phone call. Now, this was like in 1972. The only phone was the one on the wall. 7-year-olds didn't get phone calls back then. My mom says it's for you. It probably was my first phone call in my life. I said, who's calling me? So I said, hello. Well, it was my aunt's husband's mother calling me to thank me for the thank you card I sent to her, thanking her for my first Holy Communion gift. And I said, you're welcome. And I hung up. And then I said, Ma, I said, do I now need to write another thank you note for the thank you call I got from my aunt's husband's mother? I can't keep it straight now. You know how hard that was for a 7-year-old? But do you know I would rather err on the side of thanking too much than not thanking at all. Jesus doesn't need our thanks. But believe me, I think he likes it. Friends, how do you and I have an attitude of gratitude? An attitude of gratitude meaning we thank people. We thank them for what they do. Right? What do we all want to do when we let someone in front of the car? We got to give the little wave, right? Okay? Anyone here ever watch Seinfeld? Okay, I have a PhD in Seinfeld, just so you know. I know every episode, every line. I could do a retreat on it, because everything in life can go back to Seinfeld. There was a whole show about the wave, and you got to give the wave, okay? I didn't get my wave. What are we doing right now? We're at Mass. The Eucharist, the Greek word which means Thanksgiving. So what's the center of our life as Catholics? The Eucharist, which is Thanksgiving. So do you see how Thanksgiving and giving thanks should be the center of our lives as Catholics? Not just when we come to the Eucharistic table, but in any time that we give someone thanks and say thank you. So friends, always have that attitude of gratitude. Always when we come to the Eucharistic table, give thanks, and give thanks in all other ways. And probably the best compliment someone could give you is say, you thank a lot. Maybe you thank too much. That's a good thing. And let us always give thanks when we come to Jesus at Mass. Do you remember the story of the Transfiguration? That was when Peter, James, and John went up the mountain with Jesus. and he was transfigured with this dazzling white. They were like this. They said the whitest material that anyone had ever seen in this dazzling light. And they're like, whoa. Now, remember, when you and I read the scriptures, we know how the story goes. They didn't. So Peter, James, and John were still trying to figure out who Jesus was. And if they didn't figure out he was something special through the transfiguration, they knew he was something special because of the guys he hung out with. Who was up there? Moses and Elijah, two of the greatest figures in Jewish history. And so Peter said, there's good old Peter again. I love Peter. And he said, he's so excited. He said, let's build 3 booths and we'll stay here forever. And Jesus said, no. I hope you are grateful that Jesus said no. Because if he stayed up there, we wouldn't be here today. We'd be somewhere, but there'd be no St. Julie Church. This would probably just be another shopping mall. Because there'd be no church if Jesus did not come down the mountain to save us from sin and death forever. And so let's be grateful that Jesus didn't listen to Peter. But Peter had this mountaintop moment. I wonder if this is where that phrase came from, the transfiguration. I don't know if it did, but it sounds good, doesn't it? A mountaintop moment. I would like everyone right now to think of a mountaintop moment in your life. I want you to think of an event or something that happened or whatever. Think of some time in your life and you didn't want it to end. Okay? Think of it right now. I just thought of the first Caribbean cruise I ever went on. Anyone here ever been on a cruise? Yeah. A couple of you? Okay. I love cruises. You are totally pampered. You eat 9 times a day. I got tired of taking that thing off the toilet saying that it was cleaned. The bed is made. The bed is then tucked down with a piece of chocolate on it. And the first cruise I ever went on was with my family. And so I said to my mom, the next day, I said, hey, Ma, that'd be good what you do at home for us. You should put our bed down, put a piece of chocolate on it. She said, I'll put chocolate on your head. I said, well, I guess that's a no. But you know what? I loved the cruise, and I didn't want it to end. But something horrible happened on the cruise. Saturday came, and I had to leave. And I didn't want to leave. And I can remember saying to my sister, I don't want to leave. She said, oh, you'd be bored here. I said, I'd like to give it a try. After 2 years, I'll say, Thursday, steak and lobster again? I'd like to give it a try. I'm now going to stop the mission and say something I did that has nothing to do with the mission. I woke up, set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning. I called room service. I said, hello, can you please send me a chocolate cake and a Diet Coke to cabin, whatever cabin I was in. They said, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thank you. Hung up. I'm waiting. Knock, knock, knock. Door opens. A very nice man comes in, gives me a chocolate cake, a Diet Coke. I said, thank you. I gave him a good tip. I said, thank you. I sat down. I ate the cake, drank the Diet Coke, and went right back to bed. You know why I did that? Because I could. That's the only reason I did it. And every one of you who's going to be on a cruise next time you go, you're going to do the same thing. Because it makes for a great story. So, mountaintop moments we all need. We all need them. A parish mission, a tri-parish mission, is a mountaintop moment. Why did you come to this mission? Not one of you had to be here. Why did you come? Now, maybe you were dragged here by someone, but you're here. My guess is, if I was a betting man, which I am, if I saw you last Wednesday and said, oh, next Wednesday I'll see you in church. I said, what? I'm not going to go to church on Wednesday. I go to church on Sunday. My guess is many of you probably weren't going to come to this. but maybe something I said or something someone said or something that the way the parish is advertised, you said, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. And look at the crowds we've had. In sub-zero weather, every night. Sub-zero weather. Some of you have been here all 3 nights. Some of you have been here 2 nights. Some of you, this is your first night. Welcome. Sub-zero weather. Mountaintop moment. How about last night? Hundreds of people receiving the sacrament of reconciliation. Did you see the Tinley Park Tribune this morning? You didn't see the headline? Okay, the one I read said, "Weird occurrences in Tinley Park." Hundreds of people skipping. You know why they were skipping? Because God forgave them. Unbelievable what happens. And for some of you, I bet that was the last thing you thought you were going to do a week ago, is go to confession. And you did it. And nobody died. Do you see the mountaintop moment? Do you see how God works? We have to be open. We have to re-energize. We have to have these moments. But we can't stay on the mountaintop, because when we do, it would become routine. If we had a mission every night, the crowd would get smaller and smaller and smaller, because it becomes routine. But when you have a mission in a special time in the life of a parish, and in our case 3 parishes, unbelievable things are going to happen. So friends, how are you having your mountaintop moments? And how are you letting Jesus be one of your mountaintop moments? Jesus, I hope, is always the center of our lives. I read an article, it has to be over 20 years ago, in a Catholic magazine. And it was written by a woman talking about how her and her husband, for their 25th wedding anniversary, decided they were going to redecorate their house instead of going on a big trip. And they even hired one of those feng shui type people. You know what feng shui is? Feng shui is someone who comes and says, no, that needs to be moved over 1/4 of an inch. Okay, we need to have that green just a touch lighter, and everything has to be in order, feng shui, okay? So they decide to hire Mr. Feng Shui, and they're bringing him in, and they're having a meeting, the 3 of them, husband, wife, Mr. Feng Shui. And when Mr. Feng Shui sees the budget, he's like, ooh. And so then the husband says to his wife, honey, there's only one thing I want, and then I'm going to leave you and Mr. Feng Shui to do whatever you want. And he's like, ooh. And he brings out this very large picture of Jesus. And he said, I want this picture of Jesus on this wall in the center. And he pointed to the main wall in the living room. And Mr. Feng Shui was going to the wife, no. It won't fit there, it won't fit. And she said, well, honey, maybe we could put it up, but maybe we'll put it somewhere else. He said, no. That's the only thing I want, is this picture on that wall, and you and Mr. Feng Shui can do whatever you want. And she said to Mr. Feng Shui, well, he says, it's your house, I'll work with it. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen. They do the whole house. And they have a big cocktail party where they invite their family and their friends to come. And people are going through the house, and they're saying, you know, there's just, wow, this is unbelievable, your house. There's something, what's so special about this? The mailman comes and says, you know, there's something on my route. You're the only house I get this feeling. The Maytag repairman comes in and says, wow, what is it about your house? And that's when the woman figured it out. Why was everyone saying what they were saying? Because that picture of Jesus was the center of their Catholic home. And she said, I am so grateful for my husband. And she wrote this article for this Catholic magazine. She said, my husband pushed me, and I'm glad he did. Jesus is the center of our house, of our family. If I went to your home right now, friends, and I walked in, would I know I am in a Catholic home? Would I see a crucifix? Would I see a picture of Mary? Would I see a statue? Now, if you're sitting there saying, oh my goodness, I don't have any of that stuff, don't feel bad. I'm just now giving you permission to go shopping. What is in our homes tells a story. What is in our churches tells a story. Have you, for whatever parish church you come from, have you ever literally gotten there early one day and just walked around and looked at the art? Looked at the symbols that are there and why it's there? Do you ever do that? If you haven't started, in any new church you go into, look at the art. It tells a story. It tells a story. You know, some people, when they think of St. Julia, the baptismal font is right in the middle. I'm sure some people said, what the heck? Why did they put it there? It's blocking everything. And I bet you when this church was built, some people said that. Well, whoever built this church and designed that, we should applaud them because they're absolutely liturgically correct. The baptismal font should be the first thing you encounter, and it should be an obstacle, and you have to walk around it. It's the same as in life. So that tells a story, and the story is our faith. And it's so wonderful watching people come in from that one font and making the sign of the cross. When I was principal and president of St. Rita, we had senior night. Everyone know what senior night is? Okay, for those who don't know, that's when you're at the last home game of your sport or in your last band concert or whatever you're involved in. So we decided that we were going to not give out stupid little things that nobody wanted anyways. So we decided to give out an 8x10 icon of St. Rita. And then on the bottom was a little plaque, and we would say what the person was in and blah, blah, blah. So senior night comes, they get the plaque, mom gets a rose, everyone's happy, we take a picture. I cannot tell you how many parents, after their son went to college, thanked me. Said, Father Tom, you wouldn't believe. We went for parent weekend, and we went into our son's dorm room. And there was the bikini poster. There was the beer poster. And right in the middle was St. Rita. And they were so happy about that. Now, I lived for 3 years at Villanova University in a freshman dorm. I lived, as I say, with 150 of my favorite freshmen. So I've been in dorm rooms. I know what they look like. And I could imagine that kid having all of his new friends on the floor come in. They're all walking in. Well, I know what the bikini poster is. I know what the beer poster is. Who's that? And then that kid gets to evangelize. He said, oh, that's St. Rita. Let me tell you her story. And then the kid says, wow, that's cool. And then he walks out. And that probably happened with every kid. So I'm going to ask, when you send your children and grandchildren off to college, you're going to go buy their little refrigerator and their towels and their shower caddy, right? You're going to get all that. But do you ever get something of faith? I promise you, if you buy something, first of all, they can't nail anything in the wall. So don't buy them anything that has to be hung on the wall. But if you buy them a little statue or a little crucifix or a little saying about love, and you give it to them, I guarantee you they will put it in their room. I guarantee you. How about when we give gifts to people, especially, gifts for First Communion and confirmation, graduation? Is it just always a secular gift or a gift card or money? Or do we also give something of faith? How about weddings? Now, we all know where we live. Every part of the country is different. We all know you go into a wedding with an envelope, with a check in it. Okay, you don't come in with a big package. That's for the showers. But what about getting the envelope with the check and then a little cross or a picture, a beautiful saying about marriage? I guarantee you, when you go visit that loved ones, the young couple, you're going to go to their house. Guess what you're going to find? You're going to find whatever you gave them. It's going to be. They're going to say, "Oh, you gave this to us." Are you going to find the canceled check up on the wall? No. You need to give them the check. Don't get me wrong. But why not give something that also will last? You know what I love? If you want to give to newly married couples, give them a little nativity scene. I am a big proponent. Nativity scenes should be up in our houses all year long. Why do we only put it out at Christmas? So you could put the big one out at Christmas, but have a small one, and it should be up in our homes. Because without the nativity, we wouldn't be here. It's part of who we are. So get a little one, have it there, and then when Christmas comes, you put the big one up. But it tells a story. And if we're part of the Catholic family, keeping Jesus as the center of our house can be unbelievable. So friends, the Catholic family goes from the Pope, which we give our prayers to Pope Francis for his recovery, and from the Pope all the way down to us and everywhere in between, the Catholic family, to our families, to our parishes, to our archdiocese, to the church in the world of the faith. And all of us are there. When you stop and think, people say, how do I know the Catholic Church is real? How do I know our faith is real? There's only been 265 popes in 2,000 years. If this was of human origin, the church would be in history books, just like the great Roman Empire. Remember they said it was the greatest civilization ever? Go to the museum, you'll see it. Go to the history books, you'll read about it. Where's the Catholic Church? We're still here. Even though over the centuries we've done stupid things, we're still here. Why? What did Jesus say? Peter, you are the rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. And us humans haven't even been able to screw it up, even though we tried. Think about that. That's our faith we belong to. We are an apostolic faith that comes from the apostles. Gandhi, who was not Christian, said, if you Christians actually lived what you professed, you would change the world. And what did Jesus say? The greatest commandments, love God, love your neighbor as yourself, which means if we love. St. Augustine said, if you want to go to heaven, anyone here want to go to heaven? For those not raising your hand, I don't know why you're here. Maybe you're just here for the free food, okay? I don't know. Which I have to say to all the two parishes already, your food was outstanding. I hope we're going to continue that tonight. No pressure. No pressure, okay? So, St. Augustine said, if you want to go to heaven, I'm now going to give you the absolute sure way of getting to heaven. You ready? You can tattoo this on your brain. Here it comes. He said, and all he did is paraphrase the Gospels. He said, if you want to go to heaven, love and do what you will. Love and do what you will. Okay, where are all the rules? That is the rule. You mean all I got to do is love? That's easy. Oh, what world do you live in? You know how hard it is to love? It's easy to love those who love us back. It's easy to love those we love. How about loving the person we don't like? And you know, if there's someone you don't like, you must always remember this. Jesus loves that person as much as he loves you. When we stop and think about it, it's like, ugh. It's so easy to say love, but it's hard to do it. But Augustine said, if you love, you'll get to heaven because you won't hurt people if you love. You'll do the right things if you love. But because we're human, we do hurt people and we do the bad things. But because we love, we ask forgiveness through the sacrament of reconciliation. And that's all about love. And we start all over again. The first test of love might come in the parking lot after Mass. When somebody cuts you off and you want to show a finger from this hand telling them how much you love them. It's hard to love. but that's what we have called to do. So Augustine said, if you want to go to heaven, love and do what you will. Would everyone right now think of 2 or 3 people in your life, living or in heaven, who you would say are great examples of Catholics, a good Catholic? Think of some people right now. One of the people I just thought of right now is my dad. My guess is many of us thought of our parents. I loved Matchbox cars growing up. Anyone else? I was a card-carrying Matchbox Collectors Club person. I think I had to send in 50 cents, and I got an official card that says I was a member of the Matchbox Collectors Club. I loved Matchbox. Everyone loved buying gifts for me because they always knew what I wanted. So I was also a kid. For us the younger people here, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. The older people were. Remember all the machines that used to have coin returns? Payphones, newspaper machines, cigarette machines, candy machines, pop machines. I was the kid that was always going into the coin return. And you know why I did it? Because I'd find money. And so I was walking home one day, and I'm at 71st and Rockwell. Some of you know where that is. And there were 3 paper machines around one of the big light poles. So I'm there pressing, nothing comes out. Go to the second one, press, nothing comes out. Go to the third one, press, money starts coming out. Press it again, more money. I said, oh, this is why my parents love going to Vegas. They just press machines and money comes out. And I took it, $3.20. This was 1975. You know what $3.20? You know how many Matchbox cars that would buy you? And I went right, there was a little dime store, to be like a dollar store today at 71st and Western, 70th and Western. I went in, I bought as many as I could. I go home, and it was a Saturday, I'll never forget, and I'm there playing. My mom said, Tom, where'd you get the Matchbox cars? Where'd you get the money? I said, oh, well, nah, you got to go over to 71st and I didn't want to tell her, because then she'll go over there. But I had to. She already asked. She said, oh, okay. And then I remember dinner came, and my dad said, Tom, where'd you get the money for the Matchbox? I said, oh, here, I got to go again. I said, well, it's 71st and Rockwell. So he said, oh, okay. So the next day, St. Adrian was our parish. I was serving the 12 o'clock Mass. My dad was the lector at the 12 o'clock Mass. And he said before, he says, oh, well, why don't we go to, one of the taverns, we'll watch the baseball game after Mass, which would be fun to go to with my dad. I'd be able to sit there with him and have a Coke, and he'd have a beer, and I got pretzels and potato chips. I loved it. And he'd be there with other guys from the parish. So after Mass, we get in the car, and he drives over to 71st and Rockwell. I said, I knew I shouldn't have told him. So we get out, and he said, Tom, which machine was it? I said, that one. He says, do you know there's a man who owns these machines? And this is how he supports his family. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm a thief. Oh my goodness, they didn't eat dinner last night because of me. My dad goes into his pocket, takes out $3.20, and puts it all back in the machine, presses it to make sure it didn't come back out. And he said, let's go to the tavern. He didn't yell at me. He didn't hit me. He didn't ground me. He didn't make me pay. But he taught me a lesson that here I am, 50 years later, still talking about. My dad's funeral, that was the story I told. Because that was my dad. All the people you just thought of, you all have stories like that, don't you? They're different, but there's stories. Why did you think of that person? Because of the way they've touched your heart. And so my dad, St. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel, always use words if necessary. My dad preached the gospel to me by doing that, and he didn't have to say a word. What about you, friends? How do you do that? And you need to know that if I ask someone in your life who an example of a good Catholic is, do you know they might give me your name? Think about that. We're in it together. That's the beauty of our church. We're in it together. I walked in alone tonight, but I knew I wasn't going to be alone because I was going to be with you. Maybe you walked in alone. None of us are alone, though. We're all here together. Another person I thought of was Father Dave, who was the pastor of St. Bernard's Church, which was at 66th and Stewart, where I would go as a seminarian. And the church was destroyed in the snowstorm of 67. So they had the church in like the hall, and the church was no bigger than these two sections. All African-American church, very small, wonderful gospel choir, which I just loved. I never heard music like that before. And I never felt so welcome. Everyone welcomed you. So Father Dave, the pastor, was at the altar and getting ready to preparation of the gifts. And in comes walking Helen. Helen was about 5'4", 300 pounds, alcoholic, mentally ill, and on drugs. That day, everything was working. She was on all of it. And she comes walking in like this, and all the ushers, they're ready to go pounce and drag her out. Father Dave says, Helen, come up here. Helen, stand here. Stand with me. Helen comes up. She just stands there, and he goes on with Mass. And at the point where we hold up the precious blood and the body of Christ, he says, Helen, hold Jesus. And she held the chalice, and she was looking at it as if she was holding gold, which she was, because it was Jesus. And she just held it. And then Father took it from her, and she walked out the door. Never have seen her since. Now, all I know is Father Dave touched the heart of that woman. And that woman, in her pain and misery and distress, she needed Jesus. Jesus touched her heart, and she walked away. Now, I need to put a disclaimer. We all knew who Helen was. Helen was a parishioner. If someone was to walk in right now to do something like that, you all need to get your phone out, call 911. We knew who she was, or they knew who she was. But stop and think about it. He took a problem. He treated her with dignity in the midst of her illness and addiction. And somehow she got what she needed, she got Jesus, and she walked away. The ushers were then able to sit down. Preach the gospel, my friends. Use words if necessary. What about you? How are you doing that? And all those people you thought of, how are you being the best that you can be? How do you and I preach the gospel in what we say and in what we do? Do you know what a lighthouse is? You know what I learned, and I never knew this. Do you know lighthouses do not blow horns? You know, I guess I always thought a lighthouse lights and blows horns. It doesn't. It just lights. The Easter Vigil, what do? We come into a church with one Paschal light, the light of Jesus, lights the entire church up. One light. So I think a good definition of a faithful Catholic should be a lighthouse that just shines and shines the gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't blow horns, just shine. Don't blow horns, just do the work that needs to be done. Take pride in being Catholic. My dad always tipped his hat every church we went by as we were driving. I said, Dad, that's a synagogue. He says, well, God's in there too, and he tipped his hat. Okay, but I remember that as a kid. Well, many people don't wear hats today, so you can't tip them. But do you ever remember the story of the new colonel in the Army who was assigned to a new Army base? And he was brand new, he was nervous, he was excited, And he could see, you know, at the window, and he could see that like a 19-year-old private is walking towards him with a work bag. And he said, oh, I bet you he's coming in here. So he does come, he knocks on the door, and the colonel quickly picks up his phone. And he motions for the young private to come in. Private, I'll be right with you. Yes, Mr. President. Oh, of course, Mr. President. Yes, yes. Thank you for trusting me. Top secret, absolutely. Oh, I'd love to come to the White House for dinner with Mrs. President. Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye, sir. Hangs up his phone. Yes, Private. What can I do for you? He said, well, sir, I was sent over here. I was sent. What are you here for, sir, son? What are you here for? Well, sir, I was sent over here. Oh, you know, for what? Well, I was sent over here to hook up your phone. When you're a private, the colonel, you're excited about him anyways. You're impressed. Don't be anyone but who you are, friends. Be who you are. Be who God created you to be. God does not make junk. Be who you are. Celebrate who you are. Be yourself. I always say that we should all be dreamers. Do you dream? Do you have any dreams? Do you have any bucket lists? We all know what a bucket list is. It's things that you want to do. I remember one of my bucket lists was I wanted to go to White Sox spring training out in Arizona, and I did it once. I loved it. It was a bucket list moment. It was something I wanted to do. What are your bucket lists? Dream, and dream big. I think if we're Catholics, we need to dream really big. Go for it. Do it. Be your best. Celebrate who you are. I don't know why I have this dream or this bucket list, but I've always wanted to learn how to play the harp. I don't know why, but I love harp music. Don't you love harp music? It's so soothing, you know? Do you ever see someone play the harp? It's just beautiful. They're just going like this. It's like, oh, that's what I wanted to do. So I remember a wedding I did. I went to the reception. It was at the Drury Lane in Oak Brook. And during the cocktail hour, there was this young lady playing the harp during the cocktail hour. And I was like, wow, that sounds so beautiful. And I was sitting at a table, and there was a guy there. I said, oh, I've always wanted to learn how to play the harp. He said, that's my daughter. I said, boy, she's good. He said, you want to meet her? I said, yeah, I do. So we go over there. Still, you know, cocktail hour. She's playing, and she takes a little break. And then he said, Father here has always wanted to learn how to play the harp. She said, you should. She said, would you like to try it? I said, really? She said, yes. So I sat down, and I don't know if you know this, but a harp falls into you. So she taught me what to do, and she said, just go like this. And she did this beautiful melodic music. That's all you got to do. I said, that's all I got to do? That's all you got to do. So that's what I did. I went. But what came out was, and everyone in the cocktail hour would say, what happened? It was awful. But you know what? It's a dream of mine. I don't know if I'm still going to play the harp, but boy, I had that experience. And guess what I have? There I am at the Drury Lane Oak Brook playing the harp. It's my dream. You know what I did? I put this on my screensaver on the computer in my office at St. Rita. And people would come in and say, Father Tom, we didn't know you played the harp. I said, well, I don't like to brag, So I don't know if I'm ever going to learn how to play the harp, but I have this picture. And here I am, and I played it. Ask the people at the cocktail hour, they heard it. So here I am playing the harp. What's your dream? What are you going to do? Go for it. This reminds me of a story. Hey, choir, you need any harp players? Here I am. You got a harp?
Talk to John.
You have a harp? Okay. So, here we go. I was watching the news one night. It must have been a slow news night. Because they were interviewing a woman who was 85 years old. Her dream was to jump out of an airplane, skydive. So she did it, 85 years old. She jumps out of the plane, and her parachute does not open. But I was told from this news story that you always fly going out of the plane with an instructor. Has anyone here ever skydived? Is that true? You always have an instructor? And so the woman wasn't killed because the guy was there, and so this reporter, who was kind of stupid in my opinion, oh, what was it like? Were you afraid? You could have died. She said, I'm 85. She said, if I died, I would at least have died doing something I'm dreaming about. I said, reporter, just shut up, okay? Friends, what's your dream? What are you doing about it? Do it. Go for it. Whatever it is. And I hope our dream is that we are one as a church in Christ. And your 3 parishes coming together to do this new thing of doing a mission together, I hope and pray it will be so successful that it will be a model for other parishes. And so, to all the St. George and St. Elizabeth Seton people, thank you for traveling. Next year, St. Julie, get in the car and go wherever. Do we know where it's going to be next year? Where? St. George. So get to know where St. George is going to be, okay? But that's building up the church. That's building up the Catholic family. And we do it together. And that's the beauty of this, friends. You know, people ask me, Father Tom, do you ever get bored doing these parish missions? I have now been to 23 states in the last 26 years, over 300 parish missions. I never get bored. I get tired, and as I get older, I get tired. But I've never been bored. You know why? Because I get to meet you. Everyone is different. Everyone has their story. And when we come together around this table and give thanks, unbelievable things happen. And so, friends, be a Eucharistic people. And during this Jubilee year of hope, let us hope that we can truly build up the church. Do you know how many people there are that we all know that have stopped going to church? For whatever reason, we need to get them back. And you know the best way to get them back is not get in their face. Hey, go to church! No, that's not a way to do it. You know how you do it? Be happy. Be joyful. And as the worries and trials of life come, and people say, why are you so happy? I'm not, I'm miserable. Why are you so happy? And then you can say, let me tell you why. It's because Jesus is the center of my life. Do you know what? You might get them back. Word by example. Example. And prayer. Not nagging. Not putting your finger in their face. Does anyone like a finger in your face? I don't. But by example, be happy, dream big. And people are going to say, why are you so happy? Let me tell you why. So friends, be the lighthouse. Don't blow a horn unless you need to. And then blow the horn saying how happy you are. So go for it. What's your heart? Pray for it. Go for it. Try it. Even if it doesn't happen, still try to do it. I'd like to close with this. How are you being called? I'm trying to read my own writing. How are you being called to be the best? How are you being called to be an evangelizer? That's what it means to bring people to Jesus and Jesus to people. How are you calling? I don't care how young you are. I don't care how old you are. Be the best. Be your best. Love God and love your neighbor. In other words, love your way to heaven. And whatever your harp is, go for it. And be a person who has an attitude of gratitude. And it begins at this Eucharistic table. And then it goes into all of our parishes, all of the archdioceses, all the way up to the Pope, and all the way down. How good it is that we are here. Don't give up and know how much you're loved. So, that's my story for these 3 nights. The saints are heroes in faith. Prayer. Did you start the 5 F's yet? Good. And then today, how do we give thanks and how do we keep Jesus as our center?